Hi, everyone. I'm Joanne Klein. I own my own consulting company, Next Novus, and I work with customers day in and day out on Microsoft Purview.
Hi all, my name is David Drever. I'm an Associate Director with Protiviti, and I am a Microsoft 365 MVP and Security MVP. And if you saw our previous session here, we talked a lot about insider risk management. I want to continue on that series now. I want to talk about how insider risk management integrates with all the different controls and features of Purview and actually Entra ID and it's a little bit Defender as well. Today we're going to be talking about information protection. Now, if you take a look at the screen here, we talked about already. We talked about this last week, and we talked about these different controls and how they integrate, and we have adaptive protection that underlies all of that. Today we're going to talk about one topic here. We're going to focus on information protection. So, just for everyone to kind of be aware here, information protection is Microsoft's Microsoft Purview Information Protection is Microsoft's implementation of ability to control your data framework. So what's a data framework? So a data framework is basically three key components. It's the identification of your data. What kind of data do you have? Do you use it to discover? Do I have sensitive information? What kind of information am I storing? And then the classification of that information. And in Microsoft 365, we do that by labeling that information, applying a sensitivity label to it. And then thirdly is that actual protection of that information, and whether you are encrypting that information or even just applying watermarks or headers and footers, and then pairing that with some really good training to allow your users to understand the kind of content they're working with. Mm-hmm. Now, this is all well and good, and Joanne and I could both talk for all day about just information protection. It's a big topic. But specifically, we want to talk about how it integrates with insider risk management. And the biggest thing around that is that what that does is that when you have insider risk management, it's also looking for things like, is David working with sensitive information? And how do we do that? And that all comes from information protection. And so I can actually put more weight on things like, is David working with restricted content? Is he downloading restricted content? Is he sharing restricted content with Joanne, who works in a different company, and things like that? These are all things that actually insider risk management is able to integrate with. And I'm sure, Joanne, you've probably seen other ways with information protection that you probably work with it as well.
Yeah, I think you can also identify in your sensitivity label taxonomy which are the sensitivity labels that are more sensitive than others, and to give that extra kind of weight and priority to, I guess I'll put it that way. Yeah, I was going to say, as well as sites that may contain extra sensitive content, you can make them a priority, so they have additional weight on them.
Yeah, and what I've seen, what I've done for clients as well is that, we'll create like a general data leak policy, and it's just looking at all the content and things like that, and those numbers tend to be a little higher. They kind of have to, because you want to try and find that even balance between, false positives where Dave's just working with the day-to-day stuff and true positives where Dave is downloading a lot of content he shouldn't be. But then I'll also create a special policy just around sensitive information. And that's where I tie in the sensitivity label. So is David dealing with confidential information? Is he dealing with restricted information? Is he suddenly downloading a bunch of information that has account numbers in it, or social insurance numbers, or different sensitive information types? What about tradeable classifiers? If I happen to have a customer form that is very, very, there's a lot of PII on there, personal identifiable information, things like that, and tradeable classifiers. So what I can actually do is that, let's say, for instance, that my trigger on my other policy is like if David downloads 100 files or something like that. Well, if David suddenly downloads 4 or 5 documents that have credit card numbers in them, or David is suddenly sending off 4 or 5 or even 2 documents that are listed as restricted, may require some scrutiny. So I can actually create a
Mhm.
policy around that with lower thresholds based on the sensitivity information I'm dealing with. So I can actually have
Yeah.
my IRM focus on that sensitive information. Anything you want to add there, Joanne?
Yeah, I was going to say another thing that end users can do with a sensitivity label on a file is downgrade it. And downgrading it, although not
Mhm.
all the time, but sometimes that is a type of obfuscation. So
Yep.
maybe you before you exfiltrate it, you want to downgrade it from confidential to general or public, let's say. So when you're trying to open it up with maybe a Gmail account, you're still able to do so. So
Yep.
that type of activity is, in some cases, risky. And that in combination with a sequence of events, which is another machine learning model that insider risk management can do, is when activities are done in sequence. When looked in isolation, perhaps they aren't risky, but in sequence, they could be very risky. So downgrading sensitivity labels, then downloading those files to your laptop, then copying them to a USB, then going back to SharePoint and deleting those same files. That together could indicate very risky activity.
And it's actually a great example of how IRM or insider risk management integrates with these different features as well.
Yeah,
Because what happens is that a lot of times a user may download a document, and if it's no longer in SharePoint, you kind of lose that view. But IRM will actually integrate with Microsoft Defender for endpoints, and by doing that, you can actually get the signals from the workstations as well. So if I download that document to my system, change the name, remove the label, all
yeah,
that can happen on my workstation, and those signals are actually still passed up to IRM. So
yeah,
you're actually getting a whole lot more visibility into the activities we're doing.
yeah,
And to your point, Microsoft actually has, I think, over a dozen, probably 24 different sequence
yeah,
sequence checks that you can actually
yeah,
set. Even so it's download, obfuscate, and exfiltrate. So what that
yeah,
means is I download the document, change the name, and send it off to somebody.
yeah,
That can be risky. So
yeah,
it's just kind of shows you how it's not just one of my downloading documents. I'm doing a whole bunch of different things, but it's also again getting back to the information protection side of things. I'm able to heighten those features, heighten those policies around what I consider my organization sensitive. So looking at sensitivity labels, looking at sensitive information types, and looking at train of classifiers.
yeah. I agree wholeheartedly, and I think you touched on it a little bit. There can potentially be a lot of alerts coming into insider risk management. There's lots of activity going on across a tenant, so being able to have your data classified so you know what is sensitive and what isn't. Just doing that and then using the sensitivity labels as triggers or indicators inside of insider risk management can help to reduce the amount of alerts that are going on in there, because somebody has to triage all of these alerts. So you really want to work at trying to keep them to a minimum, still be effective and address all of the risky activity, but don't overdo it, because somebody has to go through and review all of these alerts too. So sensitivity labels and information protection is one of the great ways of doing that.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation,
Yeah,
Joanne. Thanks a lot.
thank
Stay
you.
tuned, everyone, because we are moving on to some other great topics with integration into insider risk management. Have a great day.
Bye.